So the only kinds of gesso that I have in my stash is black gesso and white gesso. I've had them for years and years. This black one was a pain in the butt to open because I have not opened it in probably 6 years, but it still works just great. So I am shellacking a big glob of that right onto a piece of 80-pound cardstock. Nothing special, no specialty cardstock needed, and putting it on with a palette knife and kind of adding a little bit of texture there. And then once that dries, you can set it aside to dry naturally, or you can dry it with your heat gun to get it done faster. So that's drying, and then I'm going to go ahead and brayer on some black gesso. You get a nice smooth base once that dries, but with the leftover gesso I have, I'm going to go ahead and brayer it on again, and then some of that color of the white stock that you'll use, here is white, will show through, and it's super cool. So let me show you what it looks like when it's dry. So there's the first bit. That's with the palette knife. That's with the brayer, and then the one to the right is the second print, I guess we'll call it a print, that we took with what was left over on the brayer. So now let's do something with these backgrounds once they're dry. This is a stencil, had in my stash. All my stencils are super old. If they're still available, I will link them in the description. This is my gelato, and I'm just going to just scribble it on the stencil, and I'm using a damp baby wipe to just basically, it's like I'm just cleaning my stencil. But I'm really making a print while I'm cleaning at the same time, and you'll see what I mean in just a second. So there's the first one. I put that on the smooth background. And now I'll go ahead and take the gelato that's left over on that stencil and flip it upside down and do the same thing I did. If you're unfamiliar with gelatos, I have a whole video that I did right before this one, which talks about gelatos and the different techniques you can use. And that's why I created this gesso video as well. So I'll be sure to link that in the description below. And for this third one, it's like I'm cleaning. I am cleaning, but I'm doing something effective with my cleaning because quite frankly, I don't like to clean ever. Ask my husband. So anyhow, that's what I'm doing here. So this one is just what was left of the gelato on the stencil. It's not a lot, and that background was very, very, very textured because that's the one I made with the palette knife. So I'm going to take that same colored gelato, I'm going to scribble it all over that, and that's it, because all those things were raised from the, it was dry gelato raised from the palette knife. It looks amazing. So I just stuck a butterfly that I had in my stash, and that was that. And these other two backgrounds, I will file away in my backgrounds, and I can use them for a future card. Little mixed media go in there, and I'm not even a mixed media person, so ding ding. All right, so here I am. I'm going to create a little bit of texture in the gesso. This is some sand that my daughter had in her room. I just went snooping. So I'm just adding some of that. You can do sand, sugar, anything gritty, maybe some very coarse salt will work. And I'm just creating a little bit of texture there. I'm going to use another stencil, and I don't know how this was going to look. Now, this gesso is a lot more liquidy than it is if you were using like an embossing paste. So you got to be careful with the stencil you use so it doesn't seep under because it's more fluid. But this is really cool. I had no idea what this was going to look like. It looks like an ink blot, if you will, but it's super cool and textured-y, and I'll get you a close-up. Look at that. You can see all the granulation in there. All I did was add a die cut and just kind of inked up the bottom of it. So cool. It's so gritty and textured-y, and I love it. Another thing you can use gesso for, a white gesso, is to create a whitewash. I'm just painting on the gesso with a paintbrush on a background that's really bright and vibrant. You can leave it as is and it will dry, you know, kind of with this chalky finish. You can wipe some of it away with a damp baby wipe or paper towel, and it just will give you that whitewash look. So if you wipe up too much, just add some more with your paintbrush. It's no big deal, and then it just dries and it gives you that just a very subtle look at a little whitewash going on. Here's what I did with this card, and here's what it looked like before I added the wash. So it just muted down the colors just a little bit, not a lot, just a little. All right, so these are, we're going to do a little stencil technique, almost like a stencil resist. So I'm just adding a little bit of blue ink to the center of my white cardstock, not being you know, neat about it at all. If it's all got little smudges in there, I don't care. It does not matter. Then I'm going to take some of my gesso, and I'm going to apply it right over where I put that blue ink. And let's see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. Then I'm going to take a stamp. I picked a detailed stamp. I picked a rubber stamp. And I'm going just to press that wet gesso into the rubber stamp. And it's going to get that impression of the stamp. So I'm just rubbing my hand over it. And this is a very cool look. You'll see it again in a second. Still got some gesso on that stamp. So I'm going to take a piece of blank white cardstock and do it again. And then it's you know, you're just left with some really cool patterns and textures there. I dig it, and think about using colored cardstock as well just to see what you get. All right, once this is dry, I'm going to go ahead and do some ink blending. Now, the colors that I'm using right here are not what I stick with. I ink blend right over them. I don't know what I was thinking when I picked these colors. So before I get into all that, I want to take a quick second to thank Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of online classes. When I found Skillshare, I went in specifically looking for watercoloring classes, and I cannot begin to tell you how much I have learned just from that. But Skillshare is not only watercoloring, it's anything you can think of: social media, business development, cooking, I mean, all kinds of stuff. If you can think of something, it's going to be on Skillshare. Here's a look at some of the pieces that I have painted just from learning various tips and tricks from some different artists that I have followed along the way. If you check the description below, I have included a discount code where you can try out Skillshare for yourself for free for 1 month. So be sure to check it out. Just click the link in the description below and you can see why I love it so much. All right, so, you know, this blending was bleh. So here's kind of what I did. Looks gross, not gonna lie, so we're gonna fix it. So I'm gonna go in, use the same blue ink that I tried to ink blend with, and I'm gonna add some splatters just to see what I can do. So here's usually what I do when I create something I don't like. I don't want to throw it away. I try to fix it if I can. If I do throw it away, it doesn't matter. It's just paper. It's okay. But let me try to fix it first. So I went ahead and flicked on some ink. Let's see how that pans out once it's dry. And here I went in with, what's this called? Oh, sparkled raspberry or something like that. And I'm going to go in and start ink blending and see if I can cover up some of that blue. When I'm adding pink over blue, it's going to create like a purple or a fuchsia. I'm going to go in with my pad direct. Let's just see, you know, yeah, it's looking ugly right now, but it actually turns out pretty cool. Just give it a second. I wasn't having high hopes at this moment. So that's a damp baby wipe. I just pressed it right over the top and poop, it removed the ink that was sitting on top of the gesso, which made it look so much better. Let me show you again. So as soon as I removed the ink from the gesso, it just really made the cards look better. And all I did was take the same sentiment and popped it on with some foam dimension. Same card. See how much better it looks now than what it started out with. So don't give up. Don't give up. You can salvage ugliness most of the time. So here's a look at most of my finished cards here, and the ones that I didn't turn into cards, I have 4 backgrounds. I file all my backgrounds that I make in one setting into a little section in my desk, and when I need to pull together a quick card, I've got all these backgrounds. So I just think the multiple use of gesso is super cool. Some other things you can do with gesso that I didn't demonstrate here in the video was you can also use it as a glue. You can also use it as a sealer. You can, of course, use it with gelatos, and you can prime any cardstock from watercolor markers or inks. It creates a surface that your media can adhere to. So I really love gesso, as you can tell. So I wanted to show you multiple ways to use it aside from just with your gelatos. So if you do go out and get gesso, it's not a complete waste. It's not a one-note wonder. I'm just saying. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.